Thank you, Jess, and hello, everybody. As Jess mentioned, my name is Nick, and I will be talking about modeled sheets, what they are, why they're useful, and we will be building one ourselves. If you do already sort of fancy yourself an expert in modeled sheets, I will also be sort of covering some good ways to refine your model and how to import some data in there and make it a bit more user-friendly. So I would encourage you to stick around. I promise you will get something out of it. I will just share my screen. So first things first, what is a modeled sheet? A modeled sheet is an input sheet which features customized rows. We'll cover how to create those rows, customized columns, which we will cover shortly. The rows themselves are created on the sheet, and the data we input is entered at the column and row intersection. The data that we input into the sheet is used to calculate and drive our models, which is in what Adaptive calls a modeled account, which we will also cover shortly. The most common examples of or uses for a modeled sheet are payroll models and CapEx models. So models where you want to input data and model it out. So for example, employee salary or depreciation. For context today, we are going to be building our own payroll model. So yeah, we'll dive into it. First thing is how to create one. So we're going to go to this little navigation symbol down to modeling and model management. From here, we're going to jump into level assigned sheets and new sheet. And then we've got our create new sheet option here, and we're going to select modeled. We will name it payroll model. And the account code prefix, we will do payroll underscore model. For account, for codes, only letters, numbers, and underscores, no spaces, full stops, or anything like that. Today, we're going to be building a blank model sheet, but you will see here there are some templates, so capital, personnel, and sales, but we are going to be doing a blank model sheet. And there you go, we've got our modeled sheet. So now we just need to add some columns and modeled accounts. I'll be talking through sort of the most useful columns that we can add and create. And like I mentioned, in the context of a payroll model. The first one is level. So this is our branches or cost centers. It's the only column that is required in the modeled sheet. So we'll just save that. And I would encourage you to save as you go. So the first options are data entry columns, and we'll start from the top, which is text. To add a column, you just drag and drop. Text is sort of, as it implies, a free text field. We'll be using this for employee name. And like I mentioned before, for codes, underscores, letters, and numbers. We'll save that. The next one is number. Similar to text, it is a free entry sort of column, but obviously a number. So we'll be using this to calculate our annual salary. Next, we have date in the sheet itself, which we will see shortly. Is a little drop down calendar box, good for, and it also sort of sets the bookends or the time period that we want to model. So we'll use it for start of employment date and end of employment date. Next, we have text selector. This can be handy for when you have some, when you want people to enter data for something, but you don't want them to be able to free text it. You want pre-populated options. So for example, you might have location, and then in here, you can enter the options. So you might have Vic, New South Wales, and Tas. And then in the sheet, it will have a little drop-down box with just those three options. We'll jump into the sheet shortly so you can see that. The next two are initial balance and time span. There are very sort of niche circumstances that we use these, so I'm not going to cover them too much. If you do want some more information on them, I would encourage you to jump into this little question mark here, which is the Adaptive Resource Center. And you can just jump in and search any sort of keywords that you want to find out more about. There's plenty of information there. And then the next one is a checkbox, which is a new feature on modeled accounts. So if you have a modeled sheets, if you have an existing modeled sheet and maybe you have a drop down yes or no, you might want to think about replacing that with a checkbox. It can be sort of neaten up your modeled sheet. So we'll use this as an allowance sort of checkbox. We will save that. And now we have, I will talk about, you can add your existing dimensions and attributes into the model sheet as well as columns. So they'll also populate as little drop-down boxes similar to the text selector. And we have this display column. I'm not going to jump into that too much because similar to our initial balance and time span, there are sort of niche circumstances that we use that. And again, if you want more information, I would encourage you to use the Adaptive Resource Center. But we will have a look at our sheet. Scroll down the bottom, there it is. So there's our columns that we created: employee name, salary, start date, end date, location, and allowances. Now to add in a row of data, we're just going to select this box here, add row. And from here, we can punch in some data. I'll show you. So there's that little drop-down calendar box that I mentioned. And this is the little checkbox. We'll save that. And for some context up here, we've got a little save button. I would encourage you to frequently save, especially if this is white. That means you should save. This is a little download box. If you select this, it will download this sheet as an Excel file. We've got our add row, and then the one next to it is delete row. We have our copy formulas. I won't go into too much detail on that one as it is not really applicable to modeled sheets. If you change the sort of view, you might change how it's sort of filtered or something like that. You can revert it back to default view. We have our display options. You might want to filter rows or hide columns. And then this is a filter or a search bar. So if we entered John and say we had 100 rows of employees, it would just come up with our Johns. So next step would be to create some modeled accounts. So like I mentioned, this is to model out our data. I'm just going to be creating 3 pretty simple modeled accounts here. Sorry, to get to the modeled account creator, we'll go modeling, model management, level assigned sheets. We're going to our modeled sheet, which is our payroll model, and then modeled accounts. From here, we're going to select this create new calculated account. We'll be doing a partial headcount calculation. If we scroll down to our formula, and I would encourage you to always sort of use Formula Assistant. So this first one is we're going to use a time fraction calculation. So if we use the Formula Assistant, we've got this little help panel here, and that just sort of explains the formula. So if I insert that, our date 1 is going to be our start date, which is here. And our D2 is going to be our end date. So we'll save that. We'll add a headcount calculation. So this will just populate 1 if partial headcount is greater than 0. And, or sorry, if partial headcount is 1, we'll get a 1, and if it's not, it will be a 0. So we're going to use a if statement, which we can find here. You'll notice that there is 2 Fs, the second F standing for fast. I would encourage you to use the one with 2 Fs. It's just simply better for performance. So we are going to say if our partial headcount equals 1, give me 1, otherwise 0. And if you are sitting there thinking, how could I ever get as good at formulas as you? I know it can seem slightly overwhelming at first. I would encourage you again to jump in here. Go to the home page and search formulas. There's plenty of information there on the syntax. There's lots of example formulas, really useful guides on how to learn formulas. Or if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or another consultant. I know Troy fancies himself pretty good at formulas as well. Not quite as good as I am, but he'll get there, I'm sure. Next, we're going to add in our monthly salary. So we're going to use our div F, similar to if we have our normal div and our div F. And then if we click on this question mark, we can see it's got the numerator, denominator, just sort of explains that there. So we'll insert that. We'll have our annual salary, and we'll divide it by 12 months. We'll save that. Now, to find these, we'll jump back into our payroll model, right-click on any cell, and we will see we'll see here our salary is obviously populating 10,000 each month, which is right, our partial headcount and our headcount. But what we don't want is for it to populate when the employee isn't working. So how we can fix that is just jumping back into our formula, and we can multiply it by our headcount. So multiply by 1 if the employee is working, and 0 if they are not working. So we'll just jump back in and have a look at that. There we go, that's better. And then we can also test this works by putting in an end date. making sure that it's only sort of populating for in between those time periods. So we'll jump in. Yep, perfect. If we jump back out. So that's pretty much how to build a modeled sheet. Obviously, there is a lot more detail you can go into. And like I mentioned, I would encourage you to read up some more on formulas. It can seem overwhelming at first, but it is pretty easy to pick up the syntax and how to build your own formulas, especially if you are familiar with Excel, some of those logical statements like if and those sort of things. You can string together some pretty nifty formulas. The next thing I will quickly cover off is, obviously it is impractical to assume you're going to add in every single employee one by one. So we'll quickly look at how to import in bulk. So we're going to jump into our navigation, go down to integration and import data. From here, we're going to select our version. So we're going to go working budget, and then we've got all our sheet options here. So we're going to select our payroll model, and then we can download this template. And this is just going to give us an Excel version of that modeled sheet that we have built in here. So you'll see we've got our columns, so level code, location, name, salary, start date and date, and allowance. So you would simply enter in the level code, location, are the only two required, and then you can copy and paste from, if you have an existing Excel spreadsheet or whatever, you can just put in all the data in here. I will mention it is important, if you are importing data, that the level code and location, if they're in this required column field, that they match Adaptive exactly. So for example, we have Vic in our payroll model, you can't enter Victoria. Has to be Vic if you want it to work. And the same with level code. Can't say, for example, and instead of and, you need to match Adaptive exactly. And then from here, once you have all your data, you would just simply select the file. So you would save on your computer, select the file and import it from there. And then that would populate in your payroll model. That's pretty much everything I had to cover off. Thank you guys for listening. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or another consultant. And I will hand it back to Jess.
Well, before you go, Nick, we did actually have a couple of questions through the
Q&A,
which I thought might be a perfect opportunity for you to ask them. Sorry. The first question we had was, can I change the names of my columns after I've finished building my model?
Yes, absolutely you can. That is a good question. So you would just go back to so that was the navigation model management. We're going to jump into our payroll model. We have our columns and levels. And then from here, you can just change it in here. So if you wanted to split it out, employee surname, and just save it there. And then maybe you want to add a first name, but yes, you can. And you can change the code as well. And if you do change the code, that is also not going to impact the formulas. They will automatically update with the new code. So all of this is not set in stone. You can change it.
Excellent. And then we just had another one that I'll combine into the one question, that can you sort rows and copy rows as well?
Yes, you can. That is another fantastic question. You can sort rows. So if we add another, we will add another employee. So I'll save that. So to sort our rows, we will just pick, if you wanted to sort by salary, you would just select the salary and it sorts lowest to highest. If you want to sort highest to lowest, you can just select that again. And that's the same for all columns. So you can sort by start and end date as well. So yeah, just clicking on those will get you that. And the next one, can you copy rows? Yes, you can. So you just highlight it like a normal. So you don't even need to highlight it. You can just right click on a cell, select copy row, and it will just create a copy of the row down the bottom there. So to show that again, just right click on any cell in the row that you want to copy and just select copy row.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that one.